Sophia Montgomery's world imploded the moment Amelia Blackwood recognized her mother's name, transforming a humiliating restaurant incident into the exposure of a 25-year secret. The billionaire's wife, who had just publicly destroyed her with cruel words, was about to discover they were inextricably bound by blood, betrayal, and a family legacy built on lies. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. A single glass of wine can change the trajectory of a life. For Sophia Montgomery, that spilled Cabernet represented 23 years of perfect composure shattered in an instant. For Amelia Blackwood, heiress to one of America's oldest fortunes, it was the excuse she needed to put someone in their place. Neither woman could have predicted how that crimson stain spreading across pristine white linen would unravel decades of carefully guarded secrets. The Royale was Manhattan's crown jewel of fine dining, a place where reservations were made months in advance, and the clientele possessed more wealth than some small nations. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over cream-colored walls, and the soft murmur of conversation blended with the delicate clink of silver against china. It was a cathedral to opulence, and Sophia Montgomery was its most unlikely acolyte. At 25, Sophia moved through the restaurant with practiced grace. Her white shirt was crisp, her black vest perfectly tailored, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. 5 years of serving the elite had taught her invisibility, the art of anticipating needs without being seen, of existing in the periphery of importance. It was a skill that had served her well, allowing her to earn enough to chip away at her mother's mounting medical bills while pursuing her law degree one night class at a time. Table 12 needs attention, Marcus, the floor manager, murmured as they passed. The Blackwoods. Sophia nodded, her expression carefully neutral despite the flutter of anxiety in her chest. Everyone knew the Blackwoods. Julian Blackwood had built his tech empire from nothing, transforming a garage startup into Blackstar Technologies, now worth billions. His wife, Amelia, was notorious among the staff, a woman whose refinement was matched only by her capacity for casual cruelty. Sophia approached the table with measured steps. Julian Blackwood was absorbed in conversation with another man, something about market projections and quarterly reports. Beside him, Amelia Blackwood sat like a queen holding court, her ash blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, her gray tweed dress likely costing more than Sophia's yearly rent. "Good evening," Sophia said, voice pitched to that perfect tone of deference without servility. "May I offer you another glass of wine?" Julian Blackwood barely glanced up, offering a distracted nod. Amelia's gaze, however, cut to Sophia like a scalpel, assessing and dismissing her in the same moment. "The 82 Bordeaux," Amelia instructed, her voice carrying the crisp edges of old money. "And try not to breathe on it this time." Sophia's face remained carefully blank as she nodded and turned away. In the kitchen, she took a steadying breath before selecting the Weena bottle that cost more than 2 of her paychecks. As she expertly uncorked it, her mind drifted to her mother, Elena, lying in the hospital bed they could barely afford, fighting a cancer that seemed determined to take everything from them. When Sophia returned, the table had grown more animated. Julian's business associate was regaling them with some anecdote that had Amelia laughing with practiced charm. Sophia began to pour the wine with practiced precision, her movements fluid and unobtrusive. "Did you hear about the Maxwell girl?" Amelia was saying, her voice lowered just enough to convey exclusivity without sacrificing audibility. "Apparently she's been cut off completely. Her father found out she's been seeing some penniless artist from Brooklyn. Hardly surprising," the other woman at the table replied. "The Maxwells have always been charitable to a fault. Remember when they donated that wing to the public hospital? My mother said it was embarrassingly nouveau rich." Sophia's hand trembled almost imperceptibly. The public hospital wing donated by the Maxwells was where her mother was currently receiving treatment that would have been completely out of reach without that embarrassingly nouveau rich gesture. And then it happened. Julian Blackwood shifted suddenly, his elbow catching Sophia's arm just as she was pouring. The wine, that precious, exorbitant Bordeaux, arced through the air in a perfect crimson parabola before splashing across the white tablecloth and onto Amelia. Blackwood's immaculate gray dress. Time seemed to stop, the surrounding conversations dim. Sophia stood frozen, the half-empty bottle still tilted in her hand, as Amelia Blackwood looked down at the spreading stain with an expression of pure glacial fury. "You stupid, clumsy girl." Amelia's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a whip. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Blackwood," Sophia began, already reaching for her service cloth. "It was an accident." "An accident?" Amelia stood, her chair scraping backward. The eyes of every diner were now fixed on them. "This dress is a Chanel original. It's worth more than you'll make in a year." Julian Blackwood placed a restraining hand on his wife's arm. "Amelia, it was my fault. I bumped her." But Amelia was beyond reason, her composure shattered by the indignity. She pointed a manicured finger at Sophia. "This is what happens when establishments like this hire people who don't belong. Look at her, probably some scholarship charity case playing its sophistication." The words hit Sophia like physical blows. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as every eye in the restaurant remained fixed on her. She had spent years perfecting invisibility, and now she stood exposed in the worst possible way, not as a person, but as a symbol of class transgression. "I said I'm sorry," Sophia repeated, her voice voice low but steady. Years of enduring condescension had built a resilience in her that even Amelia Blackwood's venom couldn't fully penetrate. "Sorry doesn't remove Cabernet from Couture," Amelia snapped, dabbing ineffectually at the stain. "What's your name?" "I want to speak to management immediately." "Sophia Montgomery," she answered, squaring her shoulders slightly. She wouldn't cower. Not even now. Something flickered across Amelia's face, a brief shadow quickly replaced by renewed disdain. "Montgomery? As in Elena Montgomery's daughter?" The question was so unexpected that Sophia faltered. "You know my mother?" "I know of her," Amelia replied, her tone suddenly layered with something unreadable. "Julian, handle this. I need to salvage what I can of this dress." With that, she swept toward the restroom, leaving behind a confused Julian and a stricken Sophia. Marcus appeared at Sophia's elbow, his face a mask of professional concern overlaying real worry. "Miss Montgomery, please step into the office," he murmured. "Mr. Reynolds would like to speak with you." Sophia knew what this meant. James Reynolds was the owner of the Royale, and he didn't summon servers to his office for commendation. With a hollow feeling in her stomach, she followed Marcus away from the watching eyes of the diners, past the kitchen where the staff cast sympathetic glances, and toward the small, elegant office at the back of the restaurant. As she waited outside Reynolds' door, Sophia's mind raced. How did Amelia Blackwood know her mother? Elena Montgomery had been a research scientist before her illness, brilliant but hardly moving in the circles of Manhattan's elite. And why had Amelia's expression changed at the mention of her name? The door opened, and James Reynolds gestured her inside. To her surprise, Julian Blackwood was already seated in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. "Miss Montgomery," Reynolds began, his voice carefully neutral. "Miss Blackwood has explained the situation." Julian Blackwood turned to face her, his expression grave but not unkind. "The accident was my fault, not yours. I've made that clear to Miss Reynolds." He paused, studying her with unexpected intensity. "Your mother is Elena Montgomery, the geneticist." Sophia nodded, confusion mounting. "Yes, sir. I thought so," Julian said quietly. "The resemblance is striking." Before Sophia could question this strange observation, the office door opened again and Amelia Blackwood entered. She had removed the stained dress jacket, leaving only the silk shell beneath, but her composure had been fully restored. "Julian, we should go," she said briskly, not acknowledging Sophia. "The Hansons are waiting for us at the opera." Julian hesitated, looking between his wife and Sophia with an expression that suggested a complex calculation was taking place behind his eyes. "Actually," he said carefully, "I'd like to speak with Miss Montgomery a bit longer. Why don't you go ahead? I'll meet you there." Amelia's perfectly composed face betrayed nothing, but her eyes hardened to flints. "Don't be ridiculous. Whatever this is about can wait for a more appropriate time." "I'm afraid it can't," Julian replied with quiet firmness. "Not after 25 years." The words hung in the air like smoke, laden with meanings Sophia couldn't begin to decipher. 25 years. Her age exactly. "Julian," Amelia's voice had dropped to a warning whisper. "Don't." But Julian Blackwood's eyes remained fixed on Sophia's face, searching for something recognition perhaps, or some shared feature. And in that moment, standing in the small office with the weight of unspoken secrets pressing down upon her, Sophia felt the first tremor of the earthquake that was about to shatter the foundations of her life. The silence in Reynolds' office was suffocating. Sophia stood perfectly still, caught in the crossfire of some unspoken battle between husband and wife. Reynolds himself seemed to sense the tension, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps I should give you some privacy," he suggested, already rising from his chair. "No," Amelia said sharply, then softened her tone. "That won't be necessary, James. We're leaving." She turned her gaze on Julian, eyes flashing a warning. "All of us." "No." Julian remained seated, his expression hardening with resolve. "Sophia deserves to know, Amelia." "Know what?" Sophia asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The evening had veered so far from normal that she felt untethered, like she was floating outside her body, watching a strange play unfold. Amelia stepped forward, her composure slipping just enough to reveal the panic beneath. "This is neither the time nor the place. Think about what you're doing." "Julian, I've thought about little else for 25 years. He replied quietly. Reynolds looked between them, then at Sophia. "Miss Montgomery, whatever this is about, I want to assure you that your position here is secure. The accident wasn't your fault." But Sophia barely heard him. Her attention was fixed on Julian Blackwood, who was now standing, his tall frame radiating a quiet authority that seemed to fill the small office. "Miss Montgomery, Sophia," he began, "I knew your mother very well once. We worked together at Meridian Laboratories before I founded Black Star." "You knew my mother?" Sophia repeated, struggling to reconcile this information with everything she knew about Elena Montgomery's life. Her mother had never mentioned working with one of the wealthiest men in America. "She was brilliant," Julian continued, his voice warming with genuine admiration. "One of the most innovative minds in genetic research. She was developing sequencing techniques that were years ahead of their time." Amelia made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a scoff. "For God's sake, Julian, spare us the scientific eulogy." Julian ignored her. "We were partners, Sophia. In every sense of the word." The implication hung in the air like a suspended drop of water, trembling before the inevitable fall. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face as understanding began to dawn. You and my mother were ... single quotes. She couldn't finish the sentence. We were in love, Julian said simply. We planned to build Meridian together, to change the world with our research, but then certain ... complications arose. Complications, Amelia echoed, her voice sharp as broken glass. Is that what you call it when your mistress gets pregnant while your wife is planning your wedding? The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. She reached blindly for the back of a chair to steady herself. What are you saying? Julian's eyes, a striking blue that Sophia had seen every day of her life in the mirror, held hers with unmistakable meaning. Alina never told you about your biological father, did she? My father was Thomas Montgomery, Sophia said automatically, the response worn smooth like a river stone from years of repetition. He died in a car accident when I was 2. Thomas Montgomery was a good man who raised you as his own, Julian acknowledged. But he wasn't your biological father, Sophia. I am. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Memories cascaded through Sophia's mind, her mother's evasiveness whenever Sophia asked about her father's family, the lack of photographs from before her 2nd birthday, the strange gaps in her family history that she had learned not to question. This is insane, she whispered, though even as she said it, pieces were clicking into place with terrible clarity. Her mother's reluctance to seek financial help despite her illness. Her insistence that Sophia never approach certain charitable foundations for assistance. Her strange expression whenever Blackstar Technologies was mentioned in the news. Your mother made her choice, Amelia said, her voice cold but no longer venomous. There was something almost pitying in her expression now. She chose her reputation over wealth, but I suppose there's something admirable in that. However, what my wife means, Julian interjected with a sharp glance at Amelia, is that Alina chose to raise you independently. She refused any financial support from me, demanded complete separation. It was her condition for keeping the situation ... private. Private, Sophia repeated numbly. You mean secret? You paid her to disappear? No, Julian said firmly. That's not how it happened. I wanted to acknowledge you, to be part of your life. Elena was the one who refused. She said she wouldn't have you raised in a household where you were seen as ... a complication. Sophia turned to Amelia, whose composed facade had returned, though her eyes remained hard. And you knew? All this time? Of course I knew, Amelia replied. Why do you think I recognized your name? Why do you think I reacted as I did when I saw you? You have his eyes, his chin. It's like looking at a ghost. Reynolds had retreated to the corner of his office, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. Mr. Blackwood. Mrs. Blackwood, perhaps this conversation should continue somewhere more private. Julian nodded. You're right. He turned to Sophia. Will you come with us? Just to talk. I have a car waiting. The invitation, or was it a summons, hung in the air between them. Sophia's mind was chaos, her thoughts spinning too quickly to grasp. This man, this stranger who had just appended her entire understanding of her life, was asking her to simply walk away with him. I need to call my mother, she said finally. Of course, Julian agreed immediately. Use my phone if you'd like. Sophia took the offered device, noting distantly how the latest Blackstar model felt in her hand, a physical connection to the empire that had apparently been built while she and her mother struggled to make rent. She stepped to the corner of the office and dialed the hospital room. Mom? She said when Elena's tired voice answered. Something's happened. There was a long pause, then a soft, resigned sigh that contained volumes. He found you, didn't he? The simple question confirmed everything. Sophia closed her eyes, fighting back sudden tears. Why didn't you tell me? Oh, sweetheart. Elena's voice cracked with emotion. I wanted to protect you from becoming an afterthought in someone else's story, but my whole life has been a lie, Sophia whispered. No, Elena insisted with surprising strength. Your life has been exactly what we made it, yours and mine. The truth about your biological father doesn't change who you are or what we've been to each other. Sophia turned back to face the Blackwoods. Julian was watching her with naked hope in his expression, while Amelia maintained her careful neutrality, though the tightness around her eyes betrayed her tension. Mom, they want me to go with them to talk. Another pause. What do you want to do? It was the question Sophia had been asking herself. What did she want? To run away from this surreal situation? To scream at the man who had apparently abandoned her before birth? To demand answers about the 25 years of silence? I think I need to hear what they have to say, she answered finally. Then listen, Elena said simply. But remember who you are, Sophia. You're not defined by their world or their choices. As she ended the call, Sophia straightened her shoulders and faced the Blackwoods with newfound resolve. I'll come with you, but I have questions, a lifetime of them, and I expect honest answer. Julian nodded, relief evident in his posture. You'll have them. As they prepared to leave the office, Amelia stepped closer to Sophia, her voice low enough that only Sophia could hear. This changes nothing about who you are or where you belong. Remember that. The words were neither kind nor cruel, simply a statement of fact from Amelia's perspective. And as Sophia followed the Blackwoods out through the kitchen and into the cool Manhattan evening, she wondered which parts of her identity would survive the night, and which would be washed away like wine from white linen, leaving only an indelible stain as evidence they had ever existed. The Blackwood limousine glided through Manhattan's evening traffic like a sleek black shark cutting through dark water. Inside, the silence was thick enough to touch. Sophia sat across from Julian and Amelia, the butter-soft leather seat beneath her, feeling alien after years of subway commutes and secondhand furniture. The city lights streamed past the tinted windows, casting alternating shadows and illumination across three faces locked in a tableau of unresolved history. Julian was the first to break the silence. "I've imagined this moment so many times," he said, his voice uncharacteristically tentative for a man accustomed to commanding boardroom, though never quite like this. "In your imagined scenarios, did you ever consider simply approaching me directly instead of waiting for a chance encounter?" Sophia asked, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Julian nodded, accepting the rebuke. "Countless times. But I promised your mother." "Stop saying your mother like you're some distant acquaintance," Sophia interrupted. "You just claimed to be my biological father." "At least use her name, Elena," Julian amended. "I promised Elena I would respect her wishes. She was very clear that she wanted no contact, no interference in how she raised you." Amelia, who had been staring fixedly out the window, turned her attention to Sophia. Her initial anger had transmuted into something more complex, a mixture of resignation and appraisal. "You should know," Amelia said with clinical precision, "that your mother wasn't some innocent victim in all this. She knew Julian was engaged when they began their affair." "Amelia," Julian warned. "No, Julian. If we're doing this grand unveiling of family secrets, then let's not sanitize history." Amelia's gaze returned to Sophia. "Your mother was brilliant, as my husband so eloquently put it. She was also calculating. She could have had an abortion, she could have given you up for adoption, but she chose to keep you and to use you as leverage." "That's not true," Julian interjected firmly. "Isn't it?" Amelia challenged. "She demanded a settlement in exchange for her silence." "How is that not leverage?" Sophia felt sick. "A settlement? You paid her off?" Julian ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "It wasn't like that. Elena refused any ongoing support. What she asked for was seed money to start over somewhere new, and a promise that I would never contact either of you or attempt to assert any paternal rights. In exchange, she agreed not to publicly acknowledge me as your father, which was quite generous of her considering the timing," Amelia added, her tone acid-tinged. "Blackstar was just securing its first major investors. A paternity scandal would have killed our chances of funding." The pieces were arranging themselves in Sophia's mind, forming a picture of pragmatic choices made by desperate people. "So my mother protected your reputation. In return, you pretended I didn't exist for 25 years. "I never pretended you didn't exist," Julian said quietly. "I respected Elena's boundaries, but I kept track of you both. I knew where you went to school when you graduated, that you're studying law at night while working full-time." The revelation sent a chill through Sophia. "You've been monitoring us?" "Not monitoring, just aware." "And why didn't you step in when my mother got sick? When we started drowning in medical bills?" "If you knew everything, you must have known about that too." Julian's expression clouded. "I didn't know about Elena's cancer until very recently. You've both been careful about privacy. When I found out, I made anonymous donations to the hospital fund." "Anonymous donations?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "How noble of you." "It was what Elena would have wanted," Julian insisted. "She was always fiercely independent." "Independent is a generous way to put it," Amelia said. "Stubborn to the point of self-destruction would be more accurate." Sophia turned to Amelia, studying the woman who had been married to her biological father throughout her entire life. "Why are you even here? You clearly despise me and my mother." Amelia's perfectly manicured hand smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her silk shell. "I don't despise you, Sophia. I don't know you. As for Elena, single quotes," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "Let's say I understand her better than most. We made different choices when faced with similar circumstances." Before Sophia could question this cryptic statement, the car pulled to a stop in front of an imposing limestone building on Fifth Avenue. The driver opened the door and Julian gestured for Sophia to exit first. "Our home," he said simply. "I thought it would be more private than a restaurant." The Blackwood penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of the pre-war building. As the private elevator whisked them upwards, Sophia felt increasingly untethered from reality. Just hours ago, she had been a waitress at the Royale, worried about making rent and her mother's next treatment. Now she was ascending to the literal heights of Manhattan privilege, accompanying the strangers who were apparently her biological father and his wife. The elevator doors opened directly into a foyer of such staggering opulence that Sophia momentarily forgot her anger. Soaring ceilings, museum-quality art, and views of Central Park that seemed to bring the outside sky into the room itself. Fit was a world apart from the cramped, one-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother in Queens. "Can I get you something to drink?" Julian asked, moving toward a bar cart that probably cost more than Sophia's entire education. "Answers," Sophia replied firmly. "I want answers, not hospitality." Julian nodded, gesturing toward a seating area where low-slung modern furniture faced the spectacular view. "Of course." As they settled, Amelia excused herself. "I'll give you two some privacy. There are things you need to discuss without me present." Her exit was graceful but deliberate, leaving Julian and Sophia alone with the weight of 25 years between them. "Tell me about you and my mother," Sophia said once Amelia had disappeared down a hallway. "It's the real story, not the sanitized version." Julian Julian's gaze turned inward, as if watching a film only he could see. Elena and I met at Meridian Laboratories in 1998. I was developing the proprietary algorithms that would eventually become Blackstar's core technology. She was pioneering new genetic sequencing method. We were both ambitious, both driven by the belief that our work could change the world, and you fell in love. Sophia supplied, trying to reconcile this narrative with her mother's steadfast silence on the subject. Completely, Julian confirmed, his voice softening. Elena was extraordinary. Brilliant doesn't begin to cover it. She challenged me intellectually in ways no one else ever had. We worked 14-hour days side by side, then spent half the night discussing ideas, possibilities, dreams. But you were engaged to Amelia. Julian's expression tightened. Yes, the engagement was complex. The Blackwood and Adler families have been connected for generations. Our marriage was expected, practically preordained. I cared for Amelia, but with Elena, it was different. It was a connection I'd never experienced before. So you cheated, Sophia stated bluntly. Julian didn't flinch from the accusation. Yes, I betrayed Amelia's trust, and when Elena became pregnant, I betrayed both women by hesitating instead of making a clear choice. What would your choice have been if you'd made one? Sophia asked, surprising herself with the question. Julian met her eyes directly for the first time since they'd arrived. I wanted both worlds, my future with Blackstar and Amelia, and a life with you and Elena. It was selfish and impossible, so my mother made the choice for you. She did, Julian acknowledged. She told me about the pregnancy and simultaneously informed me that she was leaving Meridian, leaving New York, and that I was to have no part in your life. Her only demand was financial assistance to establish herself somewhere new. And you just accepted that? You didn't fight for ... for me? The question emerged from a place Sophia hadn't realized existed within her, a wounded space that had always wondered why she had no father. Julian's composure cracked. I should have, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. It's the greatest regret of my life. But Elena was convincing. She said you deserve better than to be a billionaire's shameful secret shuttled between homes, always knowing you were the child who wasn't supposed to exist. So instead I got to be the child who didn't exist at all, at least to you. Sophia's voice was steady, but her hands had curled into fists in her lap. You existed to me every day, Julian insisted. Every achievement of yours I discovered felt like both a gift and a punishment, the joy of seeing you succeed and the pain of knowing I had no right to take pride in any of it. Sophia stared at the man across from her, the stranger, with her eyes, her jawline, her habit of tilting her head slightly when considering a complex thought. The genetic echo was undeniable. Now that she knew to look for it, the realization was dizzying. Did my mother ever consider changing her mind? Sophia asked, her voice softer than intended. About keeping us separate? Julian's gaze drifted to the gleaming cityscape beyond the window. Once, when you were about 7, I think, she called me out of the blue. The only time she ever did. She was struggling financially, and you needed some specialized medical care. Sophia remembered that period vaguely occurrent respiratory infections that had required a specialist her mother's insurance wouldn't cover. What happened? I arranged for the care anonymously, through a foundation. I wanted to do more to see you, to establish some kind of relationship, but Elena was adamant. She said the call had been a moment of weakness, and that our agreement stood. Julian's hands, resting on his knees, tightened slightly. She sent back the additional money I tried to provide. The picture of her mother that emerged from Julian's account was both familiar and strange. The fierce independence Sophia had always known, but driven by motives she'd never understood. Why had Elena been so determined to keep Julian at arm's length, even at the cost of her own daughter's comfort? You could have given me a choice, said quietly. When I was old enough to understand, Julian nodded. I suggested that when you turned 18, I sent a letter. He hesitated. Did she ever mention it? No, Sophia replied, though a memory surfaced, her mother, ashen-faced, burning a thick, cream-colored envelope without explanation, shortly after Sophia's high school graduation. At the time, Sophia had assumed it was related to her father's death, perhaps insurance paperwork that had stirred painful memories. See, Julian said, understanding passing between them. Before Sophia could respond, the soft sound of footsteps announced Amelia's return. She had changed from her stained evening attire into a simple but undoubtedly expensive black dress, her composure fully restored. In her hands she carried a leather-bound portfolio. I think we've all had enough emotional archaeology for one evening, Amelia said, settling gracefully into an armchair. Perhaps it's time to discuss practical matters. Julian frowned. Amelia, this isn't the moment. On the contrary, she interrupted, this is precisely the moment. Sophia has spent her entire adult life working to support herself and her mother. She deserves to know where she stands. Sophia's straight wariness creeping through her. What do you mean, where I stand? Amelia opened the portfolio. Legally speaking, you have a claim on the Blackwood estate. Julian is your biological father, which DNA testing would quickly confirm. Under New York state law, that entitles you to certain considerations. The clinical assessment of her newfound status sent a chill through Sophia. I didn't come here for money. Perhaps not intentionally, Amelia conceded, her tone neutral. But now that the truth is out, It's a factor that cannot be ignored. Julian stood abruptly. This isn't a negotiation, Amelia. She's my daughter and I'm your wife of 26 years, he countered calmly. The mother of your legitimate children. The woman who built Black Star alongside you while you pined for your lost love and secret child. I think I've earned the right to protect what we've created. The term legitimate children sliced through Sophia like a blade. You have other children? She asked Julian, the question emerging before she could stop it. Julian's expression softened with regret. 2. Alexandra's 23 and Connor's 20. Siblings, technically, but blood relations nonetheless. People who shared her DNA, who had grown up in this rarefied air while she had scraped by on waitressing tips. The unfairness of it threatened to overwhelm her. Where are they now? Sophia managed to ask. Alexandra is completing her MBA at Stanford. Connor's taken a gap year before medical school doing humanitarian work in East Africa. There was unmistakable pride in Julian's voice, the kind of paternal pride Sophia had never known. How fortunate for them, Sophia said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. Amelia studied Sophia with an appraising eye. You're angry, that's understandable, but consider this from our perspective. Julian made a choice 25 years ago, a choice your mother demanded of him. Our children grew up never knowing they had a half-sister. Our family built a life based on certain understandings, and now, through no one's fault but circumstance, that carefully constructed reality is threatened. I didn't ask for any of this, Sophia reminded her. No, Amelia agreed. You didn't. Neither did Alexandra and Connor. But here we are nonetheless. Julian returned to his seat, leaning forward intently. What Amelia is trying to say, however poorly, is that we find ourselves at a crossroads. The truth is out, at least among the three of us. But how we proceed from here is still undetermined. Amelia placed a document on the coffee table between them. This is an offer, a substantial trust fund that would provide for both you and Elena for life, the best medical care for your mother. Completion of your legal education at any institution. Financial security. In exchange for what? Sophia asked, not touching the document. Discretion, Amelia replied simply. A legally binding agreement not to publicly acknowledge your paternity or make claims against the Blackwood estate beyond what's outlined in the trust. Julian winced. Amelia, for God's sake. She's not some corporate liability to be managed. I'm being pragmatic. Something you've always struggled with where Elena and Sophia are concerned. Amelia turned back to Sophia. This isn't meant as an insult. It's a recognition of reality. Your sudden appearance in the Blackwood family would create chaos for our children, for the company, for charitable foundations that bear our name. Is that really what you want? Sophia felt a surge of indignation. What makes you think I want anything to do with your family name? I've lived my entire life as Sophia Montgomery. That hasn't changed because I found out who donated half my DNA. Then we're aligned, Amelia said smoothly. You keep your identity, we maintain ours, and you receive the financial support you should have had all along. Julian shook his head. It's not that simple, Amelia. I want to know my daughter. I've lost 25 years. I won't lose anymore. You can have a relationship, Amelia conceded. A private one. What I'm proposing protects everyone's interests while allowing connections to develop organically, away from public scrutiny. Sophia looked between them, these wealthy strangers negotiating over her life as if it were a corporate merger. The unreality of the situation struck her anew. Just hours ago, she had been a waitress being humiliated by Amelia Black. Now she was being offered a fortune to keep quiet about her own existence. I need to think, Sophia said finally. This is ... it's too much. Julian nodded immediately. Course. Take all the time you need. And I need to talk to my mother, Sophia added. The real conversation we should have had years ago. Elena may not be in any condition for difficult conversations, Julian said gently. Her health is my concern, not yours, Sophia interrupted. At least that's been the arrangement for 25 years. I don't see why it should change now. The harshness of her tone caused Julian to flinch visibly. Good, Sophia thought. Let him feel a fraction of the pain her mother had carried all these years. Amelia stood, closing her portfolio with a decisive snap. It's getting late. Perhaps we should continue this discussion another time when emotions aren't running quite so high. It was a dismissal, however politely framed. Sophia rose as well, suddenly desperate to escape the suffocating luxury of the penthouse and the weight of revelations that threatened to crush her. I'll have my driver take you wherever you need to go, Julian offered. Rise feet. I'll take a taxi, Sophia replied. The thought of spending another minute in a Blackwood vehicle was unbearable. Julian nodded, respecting her boundary. May I call you tomorrow? Or the next day if you need more time? Sophia hesitated. Part of her wanted to walk away and never look back, to return to the life she understood. But another part, the part that had always wondered about the missing pieces of her history, couldn't let go, so easily. You can call, she said finally. I can't promise I'll answer. As the elevator doors closed between them, Sophia caught a final glimpse of Julian's face, hope and regret intermingled in equal measure. And behind him, Amelia's calculating gaze. Already planning the next move in a game Sophia hadn't realized she'd been playing her entire life. The hospital corridor seemed endless as Sophia made her way to her mother's room. It was well past visiting hours, but the night nurse, who had witnessed Sophia's devotion during countless overnight stays, had made an exception. 20 minutes, she'd whispered with a sympathetic smile. She's been asking for you. Sophia paused outside the door, gathering her courage. How did you begin a conversation 25 years overdue? How did you ask your mother why she'd constructed a life built on carefully maintained omissions? Elena Montgomery was awake, propped up on pillows, a dog-eared paperback open on her lap. The harsh fluorescent lighting did her no favors, emphasizing the hollow cheeks and papery skin that cancer had left in its wake. Yet her eyes, the warm brown eyes that had always been Sophia's anchor, remained sharp and alert. "You're late," Elena said, setting aside her book. "Did something happen at work?" Sophia moved to the bedside chair, her movements mechanical. "You could say that." Elena studied her daughter's face, understanding dawning in her expression. "Julian," she said, the name falling like a stone into still water. "You've met Julian and Amelia," Sophia confirmed, watching her mother closely. "Quite the family reunion." Elena closed her eyes briefly. When she reopened them, they glistened with unshed tears. How? Coincidence? Or fate, if you believe in that sort of thing. Amelia spilled wine on her designer dress at the Royale. When I introduced myself, she recognized my name." Sophia's voice hardened. "Imagine my surprise when I discovered I'm the secret daughter of Julian Blackwood, tech billionaire and philanthropist. The man you've spent my entire life erasing." Elena reached for her daughter's hand. Sophia hesitated before allowing the contact. "I never lied about Thomas," Elena said softly. "He loved you as his own. He was your father in all the ways that mattered. But he wasn't my father," Sophia countered. "And you knew that every time I asked about my eyes, why they were blue when both of yours were brown. Every time I wondered about my height, my aptitude for mathematics, my allergies. You knew, and you chose to keep the truth from me." "Yes," Elena acknowledged without excuse or defense. "I did." Single quotes, this simple admission disarmed Sophia momentarily. She'd expected denials, justifications, perhaps even anger. Not this quiet acceptance of responsibility. "Why, Mom? Why keep me from knowing who I really am?" Elena's gaze drifted to the window where the city lights winked against the darkness. "It wasn't about keeping something from you, Sophia. It was about protecting what we had, what we built together. Just the two of us. And Thomas," Sophia added. "Yes," Elena smiled sadly. "And Thomas, for those precious years we had." Sophia leaned forward. "Julian says you refused his support, that you demanded complete separation. You know what our lives might have been like with his resources? The schools I could have attended? The opportunities I might have had? The price was too high," Elena replied, her voice suddenly stronger. "You would have been the inconvenient child, Sophia. The living, breathing evidence of Julian's infidelity. Shuttled between households, always aware of your precarious position in the Blackwood hierarchy. That was your assumption," Sophia argued. "You never gave him me, the chance to find out differently." "It wasn't an assumption," Elena said firmly. "It was knowledge. Painfully acquired. Julian wasn't just any man, Sophia. He was Cecil Blackwood. That name carries weight, history, obligations. He was engaged to Amelia when we met, a merger of dynastic families as much as a marriage. Our affair was a mistake he couldn't afford if he wanted to become the man he aspired to be. He says he loved you," Sophia said, searching her mother's face for confirmation. "He did," Elena conceded, "in his way. But Julian's first love has always been his vision, his ambition to change the world through technology. Everything else was secondary, including you. Then why did he track us, keep tabs on our lives?" Elena's expression tightened. "Guilt, perhaps, or a sense of obligation he could satisfy from a safe distance. He offered to acknowledge me when I turned 18, Sophia said. "You burned his letter without telling me." A flicker of surprise crossed Elena's face. "You saw that?" "I remembered it tonight. I didn't understand what it was at the time." Elena sighed deeply, her breath catching with the pain that was her constant companion now. "By then you had your own dreams. You were headed to college, determined to become a lawyer. The last thing you needed was to be pulled into the Blackwood orbit, to have your identity suddenly redefined by Julian's paternity. That wasn't your decision to make," Sophia said, the hurt finally breaking through her composure. "You chose for both of us every single day for 25 years. "Yes," Elena whispered. "I did, and I would do it again." The certainty in her mother's voice stopped Sophia cold. "Why? What aren't you telling me?" Elena seemed to debate with herself before speaking again. "Julian wasn't the only one who made me promises that night. Amelia came to see me too." Sophia sat back, stunned. "Amelia? When?" "A week after I told Julian I was pregnant. She appeared in my apartment, this elegant, ruthless woman with eyes like Arctic ice. She made it very clear what would happen if I tried to insert myself into Julian's life permanently." "What do you mean?" "She didn't threaten me. Not explicitly. She was too sophisticated for that. Instead, she laid out scenarios, how Julian would be forced to choose between me and the future he'd spent his life working toward, how his family would deploy their considerable resources to question my character, my motives, how any child of ours would grow up shadowed by scandal and resentment. But if Julian wanted to be with you, Julian wanted everything," Elena cut it. "He genuinely believed he could have it all, marry Amelia, maintain his family's approval, build Black Star, and somehow keep me and you in his life as well. He didn't understand that wasn't possible, and Amelia made sure of it," Sophia concluded, the pieces clicking into place. "Amelia was protecting her investment," Elena said without rancor. "She had spent her entire life preparing to be Mrs. Julian Blackwood. Their families had been intertwined for generations, and unlike Julian, she had no illusions about how their world operated. She knew the rules because she had been raised to uphold them. Sophia thought of Amelia's cryptic comment in the limousine. Asterisk, we made different choices when faced with similar circumstances. Asterisk, what had she meant? There's something else, Sophia said slowly. Something about Amelia that you're not telling me. Elena's expression grew guarded. What did she say to you? Nothing specific. Just hints that she understood your position better than most. Elena was quiet for so long that Sophia thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Amelia had been in a similar situation once, before Julian. She was younger, still in college. The father was from another prominent family. It would have been ... inconvenient. She had a child? Sophia asked, disbelieving. She had a choice, Elena corrected, and she made a different one than I did. The implication hung in the air between them. Amelia Blackwood, the cold, perfect society wife, harbored her own secrets. That doesn't excuse what she did to you, Sophia said, or what either of them are doing now. What are they doing now? Elena asked, suddenly alert. Sophia hesitated. They want to acknowledge me, or at least Julian does. Amelia has proposed a trust fund in exchange for my continued discretion. A bitter smile twisted Elena's lips. History repeats itself. She's trying to solve the problem of your existence the same way she did 25 years ago with money and legal documents. I haven't accepted anything, Sophia assured her. I needed to talk to you first. Elena reached out again, gripping Sophia's hand with surprising strength. Listen to me carefully. The Blackwoods don't just have money, Sophia. They have power, the kind that reshapes reality to suit their needs. If you enter their world, you do so on their terms, not yours. Whatever they're offering comes with invisible strings that will eventually strangle the life you've built for yourself. But what if it doesn't have to be that way? Sophia asked. What if I could have a relationship with Julian, with my biological father, without losing myself in the process? Elena's eyes filled with a sadness so profound it made Sophia's chest ache. Oh, my brilliant, hopeful girl. I wish that were possible. But I've seen what happens to those who orbit the Blackwood sun. Eventually, everyone gets burned. Dawn was breaking over Manhattan when Sophia finally returned to her apartment. The modest one-bedroom in Astoria felt both familiar and foreign after the opulence of the Blackwood penthouse. She moved through the rooms like a sleepwalker, trailing her fingers over the second-hand furniture, the crowded bookshelves, the framed photos of her and Elena throughout the years, evidence of a life built on love rather than luxury. Sleep eluded her. She made coffee and carried it to the fire escape where the city was waking beneath a gradient sky. Her phone had been vibrating periodically throughout the night. Work from Julian, even one from a number she didn't recognize but suspected belonged to Amelia. She had ignored them all. Her mother's warnings echoed in her mind. Asterisk, the Blackwoods don't just have money. They have power, the kind that reshapes reality to suit their needs. But mixed with that caution was curiosity, an insistent whisper that wouldn't be silenced. Julian Blackwood was her father. She had siblings. Somewhere in the city were people who shared her blood, her features, perhaps even her temperament. The buzz of the apartment intercom startled her. No one ever visited this early. Cautiously, she approached the speaker. Yes, Sophia Montgomery? The voice was female, cultured, the same patrician cadence as Amelia's, though younger. Who's asking? Alexandra Blackwood. I think we should talk. Sophia's heart stuttered in her chest. Alexandra, her half-sister. For a moment, she considered refusing, telling this stranger to leave, but the same curiosity that had kept her awake propelled her finger to the buzzer. 2 minutes later, a knock sounded at her door. Sophia opened it to find herself face-to-face with a young woman whose features were an unsettling blend of familiar and foreign. Alexandra had Julian's height and build, Amelia's ash-blonde coloring, and something in the shape of her face that Sophia recognized from her own mirror. How did you find me? Sophia asked, not inviting her in. Alexandra smiled thinly. The Blackwood reach is extensive. May I come in? After a moment's hesitation, Sophia stepped aside. Alexandra entered, her gaze sweeping the modest apartment with undisguised curiosity rather than the condescension Sophia had expected. I thought you were at Stanford, Sophia said, closing the door. I caught the red eye when my mother called, Alexandra replied, setting down an expensive-looking leather tote. I thought this situation warranted a face-to-face conversation rather than a series of awkward FaceTime. This situation, Sophia repeated. You mean the discovery that your father has a secret daughter? Alexandra's carefully composed expression faltered. That my entire life has been constructed around a lie. That my parents' marriage, the foundation of our family, was built on secrets I never suspected. She met Sophia's eyes directly. That I have a sister I never knew existed. The word sister hung in the air between them, charged with possibilities neither of them had considered 24 hours ago. I'm sorry, Sophia said genuinely. This must be a shock for you too. Alexandra laughed, a brittle sound. A shock. Yes, that's one word for it. She moved to the window, looking out at the view so different from what she must be accustomed to. My father called me last night after you left. He told me everything, or at least his version of everything. And your mother? What did she tell you? Alexandra turned back to face Sophia. My mother doesn't know I'm here. She would consider this meeting ... premature, meaning she doesn't want you to meet me at all, Sophia translated. My mother is complicated, Alexandra acknowledged. She's protective of what she's built, sometimes to a fault. But she's not the villain in this story. Despite what your mother might have told you, Sophia bristled at the implied criticism. My mother kept me away from the Blackwood world because she believed it would destroy me. Given how your mother treated me at the Royale before she knew who I was, that fear seems justified. Alexandra had the grace to look embarrassed. I heard about that. My mother can be ... elitist. It's a product of her upbringing. It's a product of her character, Sophia countered. And it makes me wonder what kind of welcome I could ever expect from the Blackwood family. Even with Julian's acknowledgement, Alexandra sighed, running a hand through her expensively highlighted hair. Look, I didn't come here to defend my mother or attack yours. I came because ... single quotes, she hesitated, because I wanted to see for myself. See what? You? Alexandra's gaze traveled over Sophia's face, noting the similarities and differences with an almost scientific detachment. The sister I never knew I had. The woman my father has apparently been secretly tracking for my entire life. There was hurt in that last statement, an echo of betrayal that Sophia recognized all too well. Whatever their differences in background, Alexandra was also grappling with parental deception. For what it's worth, Sophia offered, I had no idea about any of this until yesterday. I believe you, Alexandra said. If you'd known, you would have leveraged it long before now. Anyone would. The assumption stung, revealing the chasm between their worldviews. In Alexandra's reality, knowledge was currency, relationships were transactions, and everyone had an agenda. That's not why I would have wanted to know Julian, Sophia said quietly. Or you, for that matter. Alexandra studied her, skepticism evident. Then why? Because everyone deserves to know where they come from, who they come from. Sophia gestured to the photos on her bookshelf. I spent my entire life with half the picture missing. Wouldn't you want to know if you were me? Alexandra moved to the shelf, examining the photographs of Sophia and Elena through the years, school plays, graduations, holidays, a life documented in smiles and milestones. You look happy, she observed, her tone difficult to read. We were, Sophia confirmed. We are. But that doesn't mean I didn't wonder about the parts of myself that couldn't be explained by my mother's genetics, the ways I was different. Alexandra picked up a frame that held Sophia's law school acceptance letter. And now? What do you want now that you know the truth? It was the question Sophia had been asking herself all night. I don't know, she admitted. I haven't had time to process any of this. My father wants to acknowledge you publicly, Alexandra said, replacing the frame carefully. He's been talking about press releases, family announcements. My mother thinks that's premature, that the situation requires a more ... measured approach. And what do you think? Sophia asked, genuinely curious about her half-sister's perspective. Alexandra turned to face her, all pretense of diplomatic neutrality falling away. I think you have the power to destroy my family as I've known it, to rewrite my history and my brother's, to challenge everything we've believed about our parents and ourselves. I think that's a tremendous responsibility to place on a stranger, no matter how much DNA we share. The honesty was refreshing after the careful calculations of Julian and Amelia. I don't want to destroy anything, Sophia said. I just want the truth of all of it, not just the parts that fit neatly into the Blackwood narrative. The truth, Alexandra echoed, a sad smile touching her lips. In my experience, that's the one commodity the Blackwoods don't trade in. We deal in perceptions, carefully constructed realities that serve our purposes. She reached for her tote, retrieving a business card. When you decide what you want from this situation, call me. Whatever happens, I think you and I should maintain our own channel of communication, separate from our parents. Sophia accepted the card, noting the embossed Black Star Technologies logo and Alexandra's title, Director of Strategic Partnerships. Does your brother know? She asked. Connor? Not yet. He's in a remote area of Sudan, difficult to reach securely. I'll tell him when he's back in communication. Alexandra hesitated. He's ... idealistic. He'll probably want to welcome you with open arms, no questions asked. Unlike you, Sophia observed without rancor. Unlike me, Alexandra agreed. I've spent my life protecting my family's interests. Old habits die hard. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for what my mother said to you at the Royale. It was cruel and unwarranted. Thank you, Sophia said, somewhat surprised by the apology. Alexandra's hand was on the doorknob when she turned back. One more thing. Whatever you decide, whatever relationship you choose to pursue with our father, please remember that Connor and I are collateral damage in a war we didn't start. We're as much victims of our parents' choices as you are. With that, she was gone, leaving Sophia alone with a business card, a head full of questions, and the distinct sense that she had just encountered the most dangerous Blackwood of them all. Not Julian with his wealth or Amelia with her cold calculation, but Alexandra, who wielded empathy like a scalpel, precise and painful in equal measure. The Royale's staff entrance felt like a portal to another life, a life that had made perfect sense to Sophia just 48 hours earlier. Now, as she swiped her ID card and stepped into the employee hallway, she felt like an imposter in her own skin. The familiar sounds of the kitchen, the hushed voices of the waitstaff preparing for the evening service, the scent of fresh linens and polished silver, it all seemed to belong to a different world, one she had somehow outgrown overnight. Marcus spotted her immediately, relief washing over his features. Sophia, I wasn't sure you'd come in today. After what happened ... single quotes, I need the money, she said simply. though this wasn't entirely true anymore. Julian had deposited a gesture of support into her account, a sum that could have covered 6 months of rent and her mother's medical copay. She had considered returning it, but ultimately decided to hold it in reserve. Elena's treatment options were narrowing. They might need that money sooner than she cared to admit. "Mr. Reynolds wants to see you before service," Marcus said, his expression unreadable. "He's in his office." Sophia nodded, steeling herself. Was she about to be fired after all? Had Amelia made a call ensuring that the restaurant removed the inconvenient reminder of Julian's indiscretion? James Reynolds was on the phone when she knocked, but he immediately ended the call and gestured for her to enter. Unlike their last meeting, this time they were alone. "Miss Montgomery," he began, his manner cautiously formal. "I wanted to check on you after Tuesday night's incident. It was an unusual situation, to say the least." "I'm fine," Sophia assured him, though it was far from the truth, "and I apologize for leaving so abruptly. It was unprofessional." Reynolds waved off her apology. "Under the circumstances, entirely understandable." He hesitated. "I should inform you that Mrs. Blackwood called this morning." Sophia's stomach dropped. "I see. She requested that you be assigned to other sections when the Blackwoods dine here in the future." Reynolds looked uncomfortable. "I explained that our staff rotation is based on scheduling rather than client preferences, but she was insistent. Of course, Amelia would attempt to manage the situation through intermediaries, establishing barriers between Sophia and the Blackwood world while maintaining plausible deniability. "Is that why you called me in? To tell me I'm being reassigned?" Reynolds leaned back in his chair, studying. "Actually, I called you in to offer you a promotion. Our assistant sommelier position has opened up unexpectedly. Given your knowledge of our wine list and your enrollment in the Court of Master Sommeliers program, you're an obvious candidate." Sophia blinked in surprise. She had been taking sommelier courses at night alongside her law classes, a personal interest rather than a career ambition, but she hadn't realized Reynolds was aware of it. "The position comes with a significant salary increase and more regular hours," Reynolds continued. "You'd work primarily during the day, overseeing inventory and helping with wine pairings for the prefix menus. Regular hours meant more time for her studies and for hospital visits. The salary increase would ease the constant financial pressure." Yet Sophia couldn't shake the suspicion that this too convenient opportunity had Blackwood fingerprints all over it. Did Julian Blackwood suggest this promotion? Reynolds had the decency to look embarrassed. "Mr. Blackwood made a general inquiry about your standing here. He may have mentioned your interest in wine, but the offer is based on your qualifications, Miss Montgomery. You've earned it." Had she? Or was this another form of management, a way to keep her financially comfortable while removing her from the dining room floor where she might encounter the Blackwoods or their social circle? The promotion was both opportunity and gilded cage. "May I have some time to consider?" she asked. Reynolds nodded. "Of course. In the meantime, your regular section awaits. And Miss Montgomery, whatever you decide, your position here is secure. The Blackwoods are valued customers, but they don't dictate our staffing decisions." The reassurance rang hollow, but Sophia appreciated the gesture. She thanked him and headed to the locker room to change into her uniform, her mind churning with conflicting thoughts. The dining room was half full when she began her shift, the usual mix of business dinners and wealthy regulars. Chloe caught her eye from across the room, raising an eyebrow in silent question. Word of the Blackwood incident had clearly spread among the staff. Sophia gave a small nod, indicating she'd explain later. As she moved between tables, delivering appetizers and taking orders with practiced efficiency, Sophia found herself scanning the room for familiar faces. Would Julian appear? Alexandra? The restaurant suddenly seemed filled with potential landmines. She was reciting the evening specials to a table of financial types when her phone vibrated in her pocket once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Normally she would ignore it until her break, but given Elena's condition and the events of the past 2 days, she excused herself as soon as she finished taking the orders. In the service corridor, she checked her messages. 3 texts from unknown numbers. Asterisk, you haven't returned my calls. We need to talk. Julian asterisk, the offer remains open. Time is of the essence. Asterisk, the third message made her blood run cold. Megasecond. Montgomery, this is Connor Blackwood. I understand we share some DNA. I've just landed at JFK and would very much like to meet my sister. Are you free tonight? Asterisk Connor, the younger brother, the idealist, the humanitarian, the one Alexandra had described as likely to welcome her with open arms. He'd cut short his work in Sudan to fly back upon learning about her existence. Before she could process this development, Chloe appeared beside her. Table 12 is asking for you specifically, she said, her expression curious. Some guy in a ridiculously expensive suit. Says he's a regular. Sophia's heart stuttered. What does he look like? Young. Maybe early 20s. Dark hair, blue eyes. Seriously hot in that old money way. Not Julian then. Connor. He had come directly to the Royale, presumably using the same Blackwood resources that had enabled Alexandra to find her apartment. The audacity was both impressive and unsettling. Tell Marcus I need 5 minutes, Sophia said. her voice surprisingly steady. "I have to make a call." In the employee bathroom, she locked herself in a stall and dialed Elena's hospital room. No answer. She tried the nurses' station instead and was informed that her mother was sleeping comfortably after her latest treatment. Sophia leaned against the cool metal wall, closing her eyes. What would Elena advise? Probably to avoid Connor entirely, to reject any Blackwood overture as a potential trap. But Elena had made decisions for both of them for 25 years. Perhaps it was time for Sophia to make her own choices, for better or worse. When she returned to the dining room, she approached table 12 with measured steps. Connor Blackwood stood as she neared, a gesture of old-world courtesy that seemed incongruous with his youth. He was tall and lean like Julian, but with Amelia's refined features softened by a warmth his mother lacked. His smile was genuine, lighting up eyes that were unmistakably like Sophia's own, the Blackwood blue that had always been unexplained in her face until now. "Sophia," he said, her name on his lips carrying a weight of discovery. "I'm Connor. You shouldn't have come here," she replied, keeping her voice low. "This is my workplace. I know, and I apologize for the intrusion." His contrition seemed sincere. "But Alexandra mentioned she'd visited you this morning, and I couldn't let her have the advantage. Siblings, you know." He paused, the implication of his words registering. "Well, I suppose you don't know yet." Despite herself, Sophia felt a smile tugging at her lips. There was something disarmingly direct about Connor, a quality at odds with the careful calculation she'd observed in the rest of his family. "I'm working, Connor. I can't just sit down and have a heart-to-heart, I know," he acknowledged. "But I've ordered enough food for 3 people and requested the slowest service possible. I'll be here for hours. Whenever you have a free moment, I'd love to talk, even if it's just for a minute between courses." The strategy was so transparent, so earnest in its manipulation that Sophia found it difficult to maintain her guard. "Why did you come back from Sudan? Sandra said you were out of communication." "I was," Connor confirmed, "but apparently discovering you have a secret sister warrants a satellite call from my mother. I caught the first series of flights I could." He studied her face with open curiosity. "You look like him, Dad, but there's something else there too, something entirely your own." The casual reference to Dad struck Sophia like a physical blow. Julian wasn't just her biological father. He was dad to this young man who now claimed her as sister with such ease. "I need to attend to my other tables," she said, regaining her professional demeanor. "I'll check on your order shortly," Connor nodded, accepting the boundary. "I'll be here. Take your time." As she moved through the dining room, Sophia felt Connor's gaze following her, not with entitlement or judgment, but with genuine interest, as if trying to reconcile the sister he'd just discovered with the life she'd built without him. It was disconcerting to be the object of such focused attention, to be seen not as a waitress or a student or even Elena's daughter, but as a Blackwood, or at least Blackwood adjacent. The realization struck her with sudden clarity. This was just the beginning. If Julian acknowledged her publicly, every aspect of her life would be subject to scrutiny. The press would dissect her background, her education, her job at the Royale. They would speculate about her mother, about Thomas Montgomery, about the circumstances of her birth. The modest life she and Elena had built would become a footnote in the Blackwood narrative, reframed, recontextualized, reimagined to fit the dynastic story. Throughout her shift, Sophia found herself gravitating back to table 12 with increasing frequency. Connor Blackwood proved to be as patient as he was persistent, nursing a single glass of wine for over an hour, engaging her with quick questions whenever she approached. "What are you studying?" he asked during one brief exchange. "Law," she answered, refilling his water glass. "Part-time at Fordham? Corporate or criminal?" "Public interest," she replied, noting his surprised expression. "Not everyone wants to defend billionaires." Connor laughed, a genuine sound that drew glances from nearby diners. "Touché, though technically I'm studying to defend the non-billionaires against the billionaires. Pediatric medicine with a focus on global health inequities." The information aligned with what Alexandra had told her about Connor's humanitarian work in Sudan. It was difficult to reconcile this seemingly principled young man with the privileged Blackwood air she had imagined. As the evening progressed, Sophia found herself sharing more. Her mother's cancer diagnosis, her scholarship to Fordham, her interest in housing rights law. Connor listened with an intensity that seemed at odds with his easygoing demeanor, asking thoughtful follow-up questions that suggested genuine interest rather than polite obligation. By the time the restaurant began to empty, Sophia had pieced together a clearer picture of her half-brother. Unlike Alexandra, whose every word seemed carefully calibrated, Connor spoke with unguarded candor about his family, his privileged upbringing, and his complicated relationship with the Blackwood legacy. Alexandra embraced it, he explained, during a rare moment when Sophia could actually sit for a minute. "The expectations, the responsibilities, the Blackwood way of doing things. I've always been the family disappointment, more interested in vaccines than venture capital. And yet you flew back from Africa the moment you heard about me," Sophia observed. Connor's expression grew serious. "Family is family, even dysfunctional, complicated, secret-keeping family. Is that what we are? Family?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Biologically, undeniably," Connor replied without hesitation. "The rest is up to you." He studied her face. "You didn't ask for any of this, I get that. But now that the truth is out, I'd like the chance to know my sister if she wants to know me. The sincerity in his voice was disarming. Of all the Blackwoods, Connor seemed the least burdened by calculation, the most genuinely interested in her as a person rather than a problem to be managed. I should get back to work, she said, rising from the chair she had briefly occupied. Connor nodded, but before she could leave, he asked, "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Not here somewhere neutral, just to talk without you having to balance serving other tables." Sophia hesitated. "I usually visit my mother after my classes on Thursdays." "I understand," Connor said, disappointment evident. "Another time, perhaps." But Sophia found herself adding, "I could meet you for coffee beforehand. There's a place near the hospital, Morgan's Calf, around 4. Connor's face brightened. "I'll be there." As he prepared to leave, settling his bill with a generous tip that made Sophia uncomfortable, despite knowing his resources, Connor paused. "One more thing you should know. Our father has called an emergency family meeting tomorrow evening. All Blackwoods present and accounted for. All except me," Sophia noted. Connor's expression was unreadable. "That depends on you, doesn't it? If you wanted to be there, I'd make sure you were welcome." The offer hung in the air between them. A door opening to a world Sophia had never imagined entering, a world her mother had spent 25 years protecting her from. "I'll think about it," she said finally. After Connor left, Sophia completed her closing duties in a daze, her mind replaying the conversations of the past 48 hours. Julian's revelation, Amelia's cold pragmatism, Alexandra's guarded assessment, Elena's warnings, and now Connor's seemingly genuine offer of siblinghood. Her phone buzzed with a text as she was hanging up her apron. "I meant what I said about the family meeting. 7 p.m., Blackwood Foundation offices. No pressure, but if you want to see the circus in full swing, it might be educational." See, attached was an address in Midtown, a part of the city Sophia knew only as a place she passed through, never a destination. "Hot date?" Chloe's voice startled her. "What?" "No," Sophia said quickly, tucking her phone away. Chloe said skeptically. "That gorgeous guy at 12 was into you. Don't deny it." Sophia winced at the misunderstanding. "It's not like that. It's ... complicated. Isn't it always?" Chloe sighed dramatically. "Well, whatever it is, it's better than getting chewed out by Mrs. Blackwood again. By the way, what happened with Reynolds? Are you fired?" "The opposite, actually. He offered me the assistant sommelier position." Chloe's eyes widened. "Seriously? That's amazing. When do you start?" "I haven't accepted yet," Sophia. "Are you crazy? Better hours, better pay, and you don't have to deal with entitled customers spilling wine on themselves? What's to think about?" What indeed? The promotion would solve so many practical problems. Yet, Sophia couldn't shake the suspicion that it was just another way the Blackwoods were attempting to manage her existence, to place her in a position that minimized potential embarrassment while providing enough financial security to keep her compliant. "I need to be sure it's being offered for the right reasons," she said finally. Chloe rolled her eyes. "The right reason is that you deserve it. The rest is just details." She grabbed her purse from her locker. "Want to grab a drink? I want to hear what's going on with you. You've been weird all night." "I can't," Sophia said apologetically. "I need to check on my mom, and then I have a mountain of reading for tomorrow's class." "Another time," Chloe said, giving her a quick hug. "But I want the full story eventually, including Humor, Blue Eyes, and why he spent 3 hours eating a single entree just to talk to you." After Chloe left, Sophia checked her phone again. 5 missed calls from Julie, 2 more texts from Amelia, a voicemail from Alexandra, and a simple follow-up from Connor. No pressure, just options. The contrast was striking. Where the elder Blackwoods pushed and maneuvered, Connor simply offered options, space to decide, respect for her autonomy. It was nearly midnight when Sophia arrived at her apartment, exhausted but too wired to sleep. She kicked off her shoes and moved to the window, staring out at the city skyline punctuated by the gleaming towers of Manhattan. Somewhere in one of those towers, Julian and Amelia were likely strategizing, planning their approach to the Sophia situation. Alexandra was probably doing the same from her own angle. Only Connor seemed content to let events unfold without orchestration. Her gaze drifted to her bookshelf, to the framed photo of herself and Elena at her college graduation. Elena, already thin from the first round of treatments, beaming with fierce pride as Sophia held up her diploma. They had done it together, survived, thrived even, without the Blackwood fortune or influence, but at what cost? The question nagged at her. Elena had sacrificed so much to keep Sophia free from Blackwood entanglements. Her career, certainly. Potentially relationships, a more comfortable life. And for what? To protect a daughter who now stood at the threshold of the very world Elena had fled, drawn by curiosity and the undeniable pull of blood. Sophia picked up her phone and composed a text to Connor. Coffee at 4. No promises about the family meeting. His response came seconds later. Looking forward to it. And for what it's worth, I think you're handling this whole surprise. You're a Blackwood thing with remarkable grace. More than I would in your shoes. The message made her smile despite herself. She wasn't handling it with grace at all. She was careening between anger, curiosity, resentment, and a strange sense of possibility that she couldn't quite suppress. And she wasn't a Blackwood, not really. She was Sophia Montgomery, Elena's daughter. The fact that Julian's DNA contributed to her existence didn't change that fundamental truth, did it? As she prepared for bed, a final text arrived. This one from Julia. Whatever Amelia Amelia or Alexandra may have told you, please know this. I have wanted to know you your entire life. I respected Elena's wishes because I believed it was best for you. If I was wrong, if I failed you through absence rather than present, I hope someday you'll give me the chance to make amends. Sophia stared at the message for a long time, trying to reconcile the sincere words with the man who had allowed her mother to struggle alone for decades. The man who had built an empire while Elena worked double shifts to afford Sophia's school supplies. The man who had married Amelia, fathered Alexandra and Connor, and constructed a life that had no space for his firstborn daughter. Until now, Morgan's calf sat across from Memorial Hospital, a sanctuary for medical staff, patients' families, and students from the nearby university. It was neutral territory. As Sophia had intended, neither the rarefied air of the Blackwood world nor the emotional minefield of the hospital where Elena fought her daily battle. Sophia arrived early, selecting a table in the corner that afforded both privacy and a clear view of the entrance. She had spent the day in a fog, moving mechanically through her constitutional law lecture, while her mind churned with the impossible choices before her. At precisely 4 o'clock, Connor Blackwood pushed through the cafe door. Despite his casual attire, dark jeans, and a simple navy sweater that probably cost more than Sophia's entire wardrobe, he drew glances from the other patrons. It wasn't just his evident wealth or his striking good looks. It was the easy confidence with which he moved, the unspoken assurance that the world was designed to accommodate him. He spotted her immediately, his face brightening as he navigated between tables. Unlike the practiced charm Sophia had witnessed in Julian or the calculated poise of Amelia and Alexandra, Connor's warmth seemed genuine. You came, he said, sliding into the chair opposite her. I said I would, Sophia replied, studying her half-brother with renewed curiosity. In daylight, their resemblance was more pronounced, the same blue eyes, the same slight angle to their jawline. True, but given our family's track record with honesty, I wouldn't have blamed you for having second thoughts. He ordered a cappuccino when the waitress approached, then turned his full attention to Sophia. How are you holding up? Really? The question's simple, direct concern caught her off guard. The other Blackwoods had approached her with agendas, proposals, terms to negotiate. Connor seemed to genuinely care how she felt. I'm processing, she said carefully. It's a lot to take in. Understatement of the century, Connor agreed. Finding out Julian Blackwood is your father would be destabilizing under any circumstances. Finding out because my mother threw wine on you in a public restaurant, that's next-level family dysfunction. Sophia couldn't help but smile at his frank assessment. She didn't throw it. Your father bumped my arm. A critical distinction, Connor acknowledged with mock seriousness. Though knowing my mother, she's probably convinced herself it was entirely your fault. He paused as their drinks arrived. Quote, she's not always like that, by the way. Difficult, yes. Elitist. Absolutely. But the public humiliation was an aberration brought on by shock. You're defending her, Sophia observed. Explaining. Not defending, Connor clarified. My mother is complicated. She built her entire identity around being the perfect Blackwood wife and mother. Your existence challenges that narrative. Sophia considered this. Alexandra said something similar. That I have the power to destroy your family as you've known it. Alexandra sees threats everywhere, Connor said with obvious affection. It's what makes her brilliant at her job and exhausting as a sister. He took a sip of his cappuccino. But she's not wrong. Your appearance in our lives changes everything. The stories we've told ourselves. The history we thought we knew. And the question is what you want to do with that power? It was the same question everyone seemed to be asking in one form or another. What did Sophia want? Money? Recognition? Family? Revenge? I don't know yet, she admitted. I'm still trying to understand what happened between my mother and Julie. Why she kept me away from all of it. Connor leaned forward. From what my father told me, your mother made that choice to protect you. She believed the Blackwood world would harm you more than help you. And what do you think? Would it have? Connor's expression grew thoughtful. The Blackwood name opens doors, but it's also a burden. Everything you do is scrutinized, contextualized within the dynasty. Alexandra and I were raised with certain expectations, excelled academically, maintain appropriate social connections, never do anything that might tarnish the family reputation. He shrugged. It's a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. Yet you seem to have forged your own path, Sophia pointed out. Sudan isn't exactly the typical Blackwood playground. I had to fight for that freedom, Connor acknowledged. Every step away from the family business was a battle. My work is tolerated rather than celebrated, a phase I'll eventually outgrow when I'm ready to take my rightful place in the Blackwood Empire. His voice took on a bitter edge before softening again. But I had the resources to choose my battles. You had something different. The freedom to become yourself without the weight of a legacy on your shoulders. The observation was surprisingly insightful. Sophia had been focusing on what she'd lost by not being acknowledged as a Blackwood, the financial security, the opportunities, the sense of belonging to something larger than herself. She hadn't considered what she might have gained, the space to define herself on her own terms. The family meeting tonight, she said, changing the subject. What's it about? Damage control, Connor replied bluntly. Father wants to announce you publicly before the press gets wind of it. Mother wants a more controlled narrative. Alexandra will have spreadsheets analyzing every potential PR scenario. He smiled wryly. Standard Blackwood crisis management. And you? What do you want? Connor met her gaze directly. I want you to have a choice. a real choice, not one forced by circumstances or other people's agendas. If you want to be acknowledged as Julian Blackwood's daughter, with all the chaos and opportunity that entails, I'll support you. If you want to maintain your separate life with the benefits of financial security, I'll help facilitate that too. He hesitated. And if you want nothing to do with any of us, I'll respect that decision, though I hope it won't come to that. The sincerity in his voice was palpable. Of all the Blackwoods, Connor alone seemed to understand that what Sophia needed most wasn't money or status, but agency, the right to determine her own path forward. I need to see my mother, Sophia said, glancing at her watch. Her treatment finished an hour ago. Connor nodded. Of course. He hesitated. Would it be inappropriate to ask how she's doing? The prognosis isn't good, Sophia admitted, the reality of Elena's illness momentarily eclipsing the Blackwood drama. This round of treatments is experimental. If it doesn't work, single quotes. She couldn't finish the sentence. Connor reached across the table, briefly touching her hand. I'm sorry. That must be incredibly difficult. The simple acknowledgement of her pain, free from the complicated history between their parents, brought unexpected tears to Sophia's eyes. She blinked them away, unwilling to break down in a public cafe. About tonight, Connor said gently, no pressure, but the offer stands. If you want to see how the Blackwood sausage gets, I'll make sure you're welcome. I'll think about it, Sophia promised, rising from her chair. I'll wait to hear from you, Connor said, remaining seated to give her space. And Sophia, whatever you decide about our family, I'm glad we met. I've always wanted a sister who wasn't Alexandra. The comment, delivered with a mischievous smile, made Sophia laugh despite herself. You barely know me. True, Connor acknowledged, but I know enough to recognize that you're someone worth knowing better. As Sophia made her way across the street to the hospital, she felt a curious lightness. Connor Blackwood was impossible to dislike, earnest, self-aware, and seemingly free from the calculation that defined the rest of his family. In another world, under different circumstances, they might genuinely have been friends. Elena was awake when Sophia entered her hospital room, propped up on pillows and working on a crossword puzzle. Her complexion was ashen, her movements slower than the day before, but her eyes remained bright and alert. How was work? She asked, setting aside her puzzle. Interesting, Sophia replied, taking the chair beside the bed. Connor Blackwood came to see me at the Royale. Elena's expression tightened. Another one? They're not wasting any time, are they? He's different from the others, Sophia said carefully. More straightforward. Less Blackwood-like. They're all Blackwoods, Elena said wearily. Some just hide it better than others. She studied her daughter's face. You're considering their offer, aren't you? Whatever it is they're proposing. Sophia met her mother's gaze. I'm considering all my options. Julian wants to acknowledge me publicly. Amelia wants to buy my silence. Alexandra seems to view me as a threat to neutralize. And Connor just wants to know his sister. And what do you want, Sophia? Elena asked, echoing the question that had been haunting her for days. I want the truth, Sophia replied simply. All of it. Not just Julian's version or yours, but the complete picture, and I think the only way to get that is to see them all together to understand the dynamics at play. Elena closed her eyes briefly, resignation washing over her features. The Blackwoods are having a family meeting. It wasn't a question. After 25 years of separation, Elena still understood how Julian operated. Yes, Sophia confirmed. Tonight, Connor invited me to attend, and you've decided to go, Elena said again, not a question. Sophia took her mother's frail hand. I need to see for myself, Mom. I need to understand what you were protecting me from all these years. And if there's a place for me in that world on my terms, not theirs. Elena's fingers tightened around hers. Just remember who you are, Sophia Montgomery. Remember that you were loved completely, unconditionally, without agenda or expectation. Whatever you discover tonight, hold on to that truth. It was as close to a blessing as Elena could offer, an acknowledgement that her daughter had the right to make her own choices. Even if they led her into the world Elena had fled a quarter century ago. I will, Sophia promised, the weight of her decision settling onto her shoulders. I'll come back tomorrow and tell you everything. As she left the hospital, Sophia sent a text to Connor. Asterisk, I'll be there at 7, but I'm coming as an observer, not a participant. Asterisk, his reply was immediate. Asterisk, understood. I'll meet you in the lobby. Fair warning, Blackwood family meetings make Game of Thrones look like a friendly game of Monopoly. Asterisk. The Blackwood Foundation headquarters occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming midtown tower, its lobby a cathedral of marble and glass that whispered of old money and quiet power. Sophia felt acutely out of place as she passed through security, her simple black dress and worn leather jacket a stark contrast to the bespoke suits of those around her. Connor was waiting as promised, his face lighting up when he spotted her. You came. I said I would, she replied, echoing their exchange from the cafe. Fair warning, he said as he guided her toward a private elevator. Everyone's on edge. Alexandra's been in crisis management mode all day, and my mother ... single quotes he trailed off, his expression troubled. Having second thoughts about inviting the family scandal? Sophia asked, only half joking. Never, Connor assured her. But perhaps we should establish a signal if you want to make a quick escape. 3 blinks means create a diversion while I flee through the service entrance. His attempt at humor eased her nerves slightly as the elevator whisked them upward. When the doors opened, they stepped into a reception area that led to a large conference room where voices were already raised in heated discussion. Absolutely irresponsible, Amelia was saying, her tone sharp. A press release without proper preparation. It's been 25 years, Amelia, Julian countered. I'm done hiding the truth. No one's suggesting hiding anything, Alexandra's voice interjected, cool and strategic. But there are ways to control the narrative. Connor squeezed Sophia's arm reassuringly before leading her into the room. Conversation ceased immediately as all eyes turned to her. Julian stood at the head of a massive table, papers spread before him. Amelia sat to his right, her posture rigid with tension. Alexandra occupied the opposite side, a tablet and stack of folders arranged with military precision before her. Two unfamiliar men in suits, lawyers. Sophia Guest sat silently at the far end. Sophia, Julian said, genuine warmth in his voice. I'm glad you came. Amelia's expression was carefully neutral, though her eyes betrayed her displeasure. This is a private family meeting. Exactly, Connor replied smoothly, guiding Sophia to a chair beside his. That's why Sophia should be here. Alexandra observed the exchange with calculating eyes. We were just discussing the public announcement of your paternity, she informed Sophia with professional detachment. The timing, the wording, the strategy for managing press inquiries. All without consulting me, Sophia noted. Interesting approach, Julian at least had the grace to look embarrassed. We wanted to have a plan in place before bringing it to you. A plan for my life, Sophia clarified, for my identity, and for how the world will see me from this point forward. Your perspective is valuable, Alexandra conceded, but this affects the entire Blackwood family. Our stock prices, our public image, our standing in certain circles. It requires a coordinated approach. What my sister means, Connor translated, is that the Blackwood machine is already in motion, determining how best to absorb you into the dynasty with minimal disruption. Connor, Amelia admonished. Am I wrong? He challenged. We're sitting here discussing press releases and damage control strategies when we haven't even asked Sophia what she wants. Single quotes. Julian leaned forward, his gaze fixed on Sophia. What do you want? Tell us and we'll make it happen. The directness of the question, the same one she'd been asking herself for days, momentarily silenced her. What did she want from these people? From this revelation? From the father who had been absent her entire life? I want to understand, she said finally. Not just the fact of my paternity, but why it was kept secret for so long. Why my mother raised me alone when you clearly had the resources to support us. Why you're so eager to acknowledge me now when you were content to observe from a distance for 25 years. Julian exchanged a glance with Amelia, some unspoken communication passing between them. It's complicated, he began. Uncomplicated, Sophia insisted. Julian sighed, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. When your mother told me she was pregnant, Blackstar was just securing its initial funding round. A scandal would have destroyed everything I'd worked for. I offered to support you both financially, but Elena refused to be a secret mistress with a secret child. She demanded a clean break. That's her version, Amelia interjected, her voice tight. The reality is that she leveraged her pregnancy for a significant settlement. That's not true, Sophia said, anger flaring. My mother struggled financially my entire life. We lived paycheck to paycheck while you built your fortune. Because she refused ongoing support, Julian explained. She would only accept a one-time payment. I respected her wishes because I believed it was what she wanted, what you both needed, what was convenient for you to believe, Connor said quietly, earning a sharp look from his mother. And now? Sophia pressed. Why acknowledge me now after all this time? Julian's expression softened. Because I've regretted my choice every day for 25 years. Because meeting you even in those circumstances made me realize I can't keep pretending you don't exist. Because you deserve to claim your birthright if you want it. Your birthright, Alexandra echoed, her tone meaningful. As a Blackwood, the implication was clear. Julian wasn't just offering acknowledgement, he was offering acceptance into the fold, with all the privilege and obligation that entailed, okay? And if I don't want it? Sophia asked. If I prefer to remain Sophia Montgomery with no public connection to the Blackwood name, Amelia straightened, sensing an opening. Then perhaps we can reach an arrangement that benefits everyone. Financial security for you and your mother. Discretion on all sides. A buyout, Sophia translated. Again, a recognition of reality, Amelia corrected. You've built a life separate from us. We're offering to enhance that life without disrupting it. Or ours. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Sophia, awaiting her response. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, not just for herself, but for Elena, for the Blackwood, for the complex web of relationships that had been irrevocably altered by a chance encounter and a spilled glass of wine. I spent my entire life wondering about the missing pieces of myself, Sophia said slowly. Why I had blue eyes when both my parents had brown. Why I excelled in mathematics when my mother struggled with basic calculations. Why I felt drawn to certain things without understanding why. She looked directly at Julian. You gave me those missing pieces. I can't pretend I don't know they exist. Does that mean you want to be publicly acknowledged? Julian asked, hope evident in his voice. It means I want the truth to be told, Sophia replied, but on my terms, not yours. She rose from her chair, addressing the room with a newfound confidence. Here are my conditions. First, my mother receives the best medical care available anonymously, with no public connection to the Blackwood name. Second, I complete my law degree with financial support, but no interference in my career path. Third, I maintain my identity as Sophia Montgomery professionally, regardless of any legal recognition of my paternity. And the public acknowledgement, Alexandra pressed, will happen when and how I choose, Sophia stated firmly. Not through press releases or carefully crafted statements, but through my actions and choices. I won't be a PR problem for you to solve or an asset for you to leverage. I'll be exactly who I've always been, just with a more complete understanding of where I came from. The stunned silence that followed was broken by Connor's soft laughter. I told you she was a Blackwood, he said to no one in particular. These terms are unusual, one of the lawyers began, but Julian raised a hand to silence him. They're perfectly reasonable, he said, his gaze never leaving Sophia's face, and entirely her right to establish. Amelia's lips thinned with displeasure, but she offered no objection. Alexandra was already making notes on her tablet, no doubt calculating the implications of this unexpected development. There's one more thing, Sophia added, looking at each of them in turn. I'd like to know my siblings. The real people, not the roles they play in the Blackwood hierarchy. That includes you, Alexandra, she added, meeting her half-sister's surprised gaze. A ghost of a smile touched Alexandra's lips. I suppose that could be arranged. As the meeting continued around her, the lawyers drafting agreements and Alexandra outlining contingencies, Sophia felt a curious sense of peace settle over her. She had entered the Blackwood world on her own terms, neither rejecting her newfound family nor surrendering to their expectations. In claiming her voice, she had found something more valuable than wealth or status. She had found her own power. Later, as she and Connor walked through the night-lit streets of Manhattan, he nudged her shoulder playfully. So, sister of mine, how does it feel to out-Blackwood the Blackwoods? Sophia considered the question. Like reclaiming something I didn't know was mine to begin with. Your inheritance, Connor suggested. No, Sophia corrected, thinking of Elena and the strength she had shown in forging a life apart from Blackwood influence. My mother's legacy, the courage to chart my own course, regardless of what others expect. As she glanced up at the gleaming towers that symbolized the Blackwood Empire, Sophia felt neither intimidated nor enticed by their power. She had glimpsed the world Elena had protected her from, its privileges and its constraints, its wealth and its coldness, and understood at last the choice her mother had made 25 years ago. It wasn't about rejection or resentment. It was about freedom, the freedom to become herself outside the shadow of a dynasty. And now, with the truth finally acknowledged, Sophia would forge a new path that honored both her histories. The nurturing strength of Elena Montgomery and the undeniable ambition of Julian Black combined in ways neither of them could have imagined. Not a waitress humiliated by a billionaire's wife, not a secret daughter hidden from public view, but Sophia, complete at last, moving forward with clear eyes and an open heart toward a future entirely her own.